welcome back for episode number 150 of the weekly playback. So before we begin, if my fringe or bangs look a little bit crooked, that's because I've been trying to trim them on my own. So I figured instead of paying $15 each time when I feel like they're getting too long, because that's how much the stylist said it would cost for just a fringe trim, I decided to start trimming them on my own, and I'm not very good at it. So I've only done it twice so far, and I'm still too scared to cut off like more than just a tiny bit, so they still actually feel a bit long to me. But maybe I'll start, gaining the courage to cut off a little bit more and do a better job. Secondly, I was just, maybe you would have noticed, maybe you wouldn't have noticed, but I put nail polish on two nails because I was just testing out some colors. I used to wear nail polish a lot when I was in law school, but then since then I haven't actually really worn nail polish in a very, very long time. And one day I was just bored and I was like, oh, maybe I'll just try out these two colors and see what they look like. And then I didn't bother actually picking a color and doing the rest of my nails. And then I forgot to remove the polish from these two nails. So yes, I know it looks a little bit funny to have polish on just two nails, but I just need to remember to remove it, and I will at some point. So anyway, this might be a short video, or maybe it'll be a long video because I'll have a lot to ramble on about, but I only played one game in the last week. So I didn't actually have a game night at my place like I usually do, and I didn't attend the Friday night game night at Millennium. So I only played one solo game, which I'll be talking about, and then all the other stuff. So let's just get started. Let's talk about Witchcraft. So Witchcraft is a 2023 game for one player, designed by Trevor Benjamin, Roger Tankersley, and David Thompson, and the art is done by Albert Montes, and it's published by Salt and Pepper Games, as well as 25th Century Games in the USA. And this is not a review copy, this is a copy that I have purchased on my own. So I finally got around to playing this game, and I would say it's quite difficult. On the back it says 30-minute playtime. I'm not sure I agree with that, but maybe as you play more and more, you might be able to go a bit more quickly. But I feel like on a first play, you're probably going to be, referring to the rule book and trying to figure out some like peculiarities that you might come across while playing this game. So in this game, it's a hand management game, and you basically are a coven of witches who are helping this town, but this town, also has jurors, and they might, not see magic favorably, and so they might try to, have you arrested and put on trial and so on. So yeah. So I'll just read the description. So it says, Witchcraft is a fast-playing, card-driven solitaire game where you lead a coven of witches in a fantasy world where magic is real and so are the monsters. Building on the hidden, revealed mechanism of Resist, you will decide when to use magic to defeat the challenges you face, revealing yourself to your fellow villagers and being imprisoned for witchcraft. As you complete missions and defeat enemies, you will try to prove to the villagers that magic is not evil and convince a jury that you are protecting the village. 3 jurors will decide your fate, and their conviction strong. Can you persuade them, or will evil overcome you and the village? So at the beginning of the game, when you do setup, rather, not at the beginning of the game, but during setup, you're basically going to decide like which witches you're going to play with. So you're going to, for my first game, I just decided to follow the rule book and play with the families that they recommended, the families of witches that they recommended. But there's quite a bit of setup that you're going to do, and I'll post a picture, but you're basically going to be setting up, let me see if I can get a good picture. You're basically going to have 3 jurors, and the jurors will indicate on them which missions are associated with each juror. So for example, here is a juror. Sorry, no, that's not a juror. Where are the jurors? Here is a juror. Okay, so here is a juror. So for example, Cornelius. Then you're going to try to find the mission cards, not try to, you will find the mission cards that are associated with this juror, and you're going to create a mission deck. So you're going to do that for all 3 jurors and then mix together the mission deck, but you will place out the level 1 mission card for each juror underneath them to start the game, and then the rest of the mission cards will be shuffled and placed into a mission deck. And the mission cards, which will will show you what strength you need, what power you need to defeat that mission, and it will also tell you how many challenge cards are going to be placed underneath that particular mission. And then different cards will have different kinds of symbols on them. So for example, this one says success. So if you complete this mission successfully, you will get to do what it says at the bottom. So this one happens to say success. And if you successfully defeat a mission, then you will be able to move up the persuasion cube on the juror just above this one 2 spaces, or on any other juror by 1 space. So that's what that means. So there are different types of mission cards. So for example, I'll just show you a couple other ones. Not chosen. So for example, when you're playing, you will be deciding which mission you want to choose for that round. So this one says not chosen on it. And because it says not chosen, if you do not choose this mission when you are playing and this mission is underneath one of the jurors, then you will have to do what it says underneath, which it says here, lose a villager's card. So that is an example of a not chosen one. Here's an example of a failure. So if you decide to complete this mission and you fail it because you haven't met the power, then you will have to do what it says underneath, and it says gain a curse. So again, there are different types of mission cards that you will come across that will say either not chosen, success, or failure on them. So you are going to take the mission cards that are associated with your 3 jurors, and that's how you will set up the starting missions and then create the missions deck. And we already talked about how you will choose the witches, but in the beginning game, but if you're not doing the beginning game, what you're going to do is shuffle the witch cards, and then you're going to draw 2, and then decide which one you want to keep in your coven and which one you want to put in the recruit deck. And you're going to do that until you have 12 witches in your coven. And then you're going to mix in 3 curses to start with. I believe it's 3. And then the rest of the curses will go into a curse pile off to the side. But you're going to mix in curses into your coven deck that you will be drawing from as you are playing the game, not in the recruit deck. But again, you will have curses off to the side that you might need to pick up or reference throughout the game. Okay, so what else? Okay, yeah, let me show you these cards. So above each juror, you are going to place a number of these conviction cards. And as you can see, some of these numbers are really high, which I think makes it really difficult to win this game, because when we get into gameplay, I'll talk about when you go to trial and how you might lose or how you might win. But overcoming the conviction of the jurors, I feel like, is really hard. Like, you need to have a really high persuasion value, I feel like. You have a villager's deck. So the villager's deck is placed off to the side, face down, and it shows you different numbers of villagers in this deck. And then finally, you have these challenge cards, and these are the cards that will go underneath each mission and are basically, like, I would say, the meat and potatoes of the game along with the witches. So these are the different challenge cards that you might encounter, and for each mission, you are going to take the number indicated here and place these face down. And then they might be revealed throughout the game, even when you have not selected that mission. So when you select a mission, you are going to reveal all of the challenge cards underneath it, but there may be opportunities to reveal other challenge cards as well. So now let's just talk about gameplay. So after you've done setup, which I know I did not explain very well. Oh, and before I go on, you have 3 persuasion cubes, which you're going to place on the jurors. And for a regular game, you're going to place it on the 1 space of a juror. For a more difficult game, you'll place it on 0, and for an easier game, you'll place it on 2. So again, you want your persuasion to go higher and higher so you can defeat the conviction that is placed above those jurors, and you won't necessarily know how much conviction they have unless you get abilities to reveal their conviction, which you might as you're playing. So now let's start. So you are going to draw a hand of 5 cards from your coven deck, which again may include curses. If you have a curse in your hand, it essentially does nothing, but there may be opportunities to remove it. Then you're going to decide how many witches you want to play at that point in time. So let's suppose I drew a hand of 4 witches and 1 curse. So now I will decide whether I want to play all 4 witches right now, 1 witch, 2 witch, or 3 witches. You have to play at least 1. So you're going to play a witch. If you decide to play it for its hidden value. So in this case, the hidden value for this witch is 0. So let's not go with her. Let's go with Amelia Stevens. So for this one, the hidden value of this witch is 2. So if I play her, I'm going to place her on my left-hand side, onto my hidden side. So you'll designate one side as hidden and one side as revealed. And then her power would be 2 when I'm trying to defeat challenges and missions. However, if I want to do a revealed witch, then I would place her on my right side and her power would be 3+. Now the plus means that there's going to be something that may give you more power depending on what's written over here. So for this witch, it says +2 power for each familiar in your play area. So I'll tell you in a minute what a familiar is. So you will decide if you want to play a witch as hidden or revealed. The downside to playing a revealed witch, even though the power may be higher, is that immediately at the end of the round, they're going to go to prison. So you will not have the opportunity to use them again unless you get a card that will allow you to release them from prison. So unless you get an ability that will allow you to do that. So you're going to decide if you want the witch to be revealed or hidden, and then that determines their power value. So before we continue, I'll just tell you what familiars are. So within these challenge cards, some of them are going to be familiars, and familiars, when you successfully meet the challenge, you recruit them and they will then give you power and maybe some kind of an ongoing ability. So for the example, this one, Black Goat. At the start of each round, you may uncover a challenge on any one mission. Oh, I really wish I'd gotten the Black Goat. So if you successfully complete this challenge, you recruit this Black Goat into your coven and they will just stay face up. So familiars just stay face up and add power to your power value as you are completing challenges and missions. So now let's suppose I decided I wanted to play Amelia Stevens. So I've revealed one witch, well, not revealed, played one witch. So I'm going to say that she was hidden. Then the next step is I choose a mission. At this point, in the beginning of the game, you're going to have 3 face-up missions to choose from. And right now, at the start of the game, all the challenge cards are going to be face down. So I'm going to choose a mission and then reveal the challenge cards underneath that mission. So again, for example, let's suppose I'm playing this mission, which is an Act 2 mission. Retrieve the eel traps from the river. So this one, I would need a power of 4 to defeat, but again, it has 4 challenge cards underneath it, which I've now revealed. And some of these challenge cards can be quite difficult. Like for example, there's a challenge card called Skeletons, which I find to be very difficult. Let me see if I can find Skeletons right now. Where are you? Ah, here we go. Skeletons. So Skeletons says chosen. So that means if I chose this mission, it says you cannot overcome a mission while it has any skeletons. +1 difficulty for each hidden witch in play. And this already has a 3+ difficulty. So, actually, now I'm wondering if I did this wrong, because in my mind, what I did was I used 3 as the base number and then added 1 for each hidden witch I had in play. I'm wondering now, because I actually referenced Board Game Geek as well, trying to figure out more about this card, but I couldn't find enough information about it. But now I'm wondering if I did that wrong, because it's 3+. So I'm wondering, maybe I did it right. Maybe 3 is the base. That's the way I did it. So I had it as 3 as the base, and then I counted up all my hidden witches, and then that would add 1 to its power, which I would need to then use to defeat. But anyway, let's suppose I've chosen my mission and revealed the challenge cards, which in this case would be 4. So now the next phase of the game is you play your remaining witches. So now that you have a better idea of what challenges await you, you might have a better idea of where you want to play your witches. Do you want to have them be hidden so that they can, you know, still be available for you to draw and play with? Or do you want to reveal them and have them have more power, but they'll go to prison immediately after this round, and there is not a chance for you to get them back in your hand unless a special ability comes up at some point. So at this point, you're going to decide, and you're going to look at the abilities of the witches, and you're going to look at the power values, and then decide what you want to do and how you want to play your remaining witches. You must play all of your remaining witches. You cannot save any for the next round. So then at this point, you're now going to look at your total power and then decide how many challenges you are able to defeat. So first you will tackle any challenges that you want to tackle. Now you don't need to necessarily tackle all of the challenges in order to defeat the mission itself, but you want to save enough power for the mission. So for example, I'm going to take away the skeletons because they are a little bit confusing for me right now, but let's suppose I had this evil witch, a black cat, possessed, and lost soldiers. So right now, these are the cards that would be underneath my mission, and I will look at these cards and decide which of these challenges I want to defeat. And again, you don't need to defeat all of them, but you're going to strategically decide what you want to do. So in my case, I probably definitely want to defeat the black cat and recruit him as a familiar, because he is a familiar, and then he will give me power in subsequent rounds. And in subsequent rounds, he'll give me +1 power for each revealed witch. So I want to capture this black cat and make them a familiar. So I would be spending 2 of my power. So now 2 power is gone. So now I'm going to decide, okay, do I want to defeat any more challenges, or do I want to go to defeating this mission? And you definitely want to try to defeat missions, because if at any point you fail to complete 2 missions, then the game is automatically over. So I'm going to look at how much power I have left, whether I can complete any more of these challenges, or whether now I go straight to completing this mission. So if you don't complete these other challenges, then you would do what it says on the bottom if there is a failure. So for example, this one, failure, exile a random hidden witch. Place the lost soldiers on top of the challenge deck. So if I fail to do this, then I would have to do what it says on the bottom. This one, I would gain a curse. And you don't want to fill up your coven with curses, because that's really not good. And then this one says either it shows you a success or a defeat, depending on which one you do. So if I fail this one, I would decrease Ichibod's persuasion by 1. So again, you don't have to complete all of the challenges. So let's suppose I didn't complete all of the challenges, did whatever the failures said. Now I look at this and see if I have enough power to defeat this. And if I do, then great, because then I can do what it says on the bottom. This one says success, and it says draw 1 fewer card from the coven deck during the recover phase this round. Well, that's not very nice. Like, why would that be a success? But maybe it's that way because the persuasion value is higher. So if you succeed, now you will get to increase the persuasion value of the the juror that is directly above this by 4, or any other juror by 2. So maybe that's why the success thing is not that great. I don't know. So anyway, so if you succeed, you're then going to put this off to the side, and then during recovery, you'll end up drawing a new mission and so on. But if you fail, you turn this upside down, and now for the rest of the game, you have 1 fewer mission to choose from, which is, again, not good. So you're going to continue in this fashion. So then let's go into recover. So when you recover, all your hidden witches that are not revealed to the public will go into the discard pile, and you're going to draw 5 new cards from the coven deck. If you had any revealed witches, they're going to go to prison, so they are not available for you. They will not go to discard unless, again, you get some kind of a power which will let you get them back at some point. And then you're going to reveal a new mission card and place new challenge cards face down underneath it according to the number on the card. And then you will decide again. Now, at some point, you will want to go to trial, or you may be forced to go to trial. And that is essentially something you want to do before the game ends in any other way. So let me just talk about game end conditions and how you can immediately lose. So the game can end in one of several ways. If you fail 2 missions, you automatically lose. If the total number of villagers on the cards in the Lost Souls pile is 5 or greater. So there may be some cards that tell you that you have to remove a villager's card, and then if you do that, you're going to place it into the Lost Souls pile. So those are basically people who've been killed by evil forces. You are told to gain a curse when the curse pile is empty. So if the curse pile is empty and you've filled your deck, your coven, with curses, and you can't add a new curse when you need to, then you will automatically lose. You draw a new hand with no witches during phase 6, which is recover. So again, if you've filled your deck with curses and you draw all 5 curses and no witches, obviously you're going to lose because you can't do anything at that point. Or a card effect tells you that you have lost. I did not come across that, but that would really suck. So after, before recover, you can decide whether or not you want to go to trial. And again, this might be forced upon you. For example, I saw a mission card that said if you fail that mission, you have to go to trial. So if you go to trial, let's talk about what you're going to do. So now you're going to, if you haven't already revealed these conviction cards above a juror, you're going to do that. So let's suppose these cards were above a juror. So we have a 6, a 3, and a 2, which is really high. So that's 11. So in order for this juror to be on your side, their persuasion has to be higher than 11. However, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've immediately lost just because you lose one juror, because this is a trial. So you need to maybe just get like 1 or 2 jurors, right? So there is a little chart here that tells you if you've won or lost depending on how each juror ended up ruling in this trial. So again, if the juror's conviction is less than or equal to the persuasion, you have succeeded in convincing them. If the juror's conviction is greater than the persuasion, you have failed to convince them. If you convince all 3 jurors, then you are innocent and you have victory, so you've won. If you convince 2 jurors, then it's not guilty and it's a draw. So in this game, it's considered a draw. If you've convinced 1 juror, you're guilty and it's a minor loss. And then if you've convinced no jurors, evil reigns and it's major loss. So, again, it's a solo game, so you're going to be playing and trying to get better and better and eventually trying to get to the point where you've convinced all 3 jurors, which God only knows how that will happen. Like, from my play of the game, I feel like, wow, this is difficult. Like, yeah, I think I could get better at it. I enjoyed my play of the game. I did decide to go to trial at one point, just because I just knew that I was eventually going to lose anyway, so I just thought it would be fun just to go to trial because I was not doing too well. But yeah, this is a really cool game. So it's a really cool solo game, with some strategy in it, but also some luck depending on what comes up. But just really knowing when to play your cards and how to play them as hidden or revealed. Do you want to keep more witches but not have enough power to then defeat challenges and maybe missions? Do you want to reveal? Like, you really have decisions to make that are going to impact the rest of the game. And those decisions, that you make will depend on what witches you have in your hand, what missions you see, what the effects will be if you fail, and so on. So just a lot of variability and just a lot of interesting choices to make in this game. So yeah, so if you're looking for an interesting kind of cool solo game with a cool theme, which I really like. I really, really love this theme. And the artwork is really great as well. So I would recommend it. So if you are into solo games, then I would check out Witchcraft. I have not played Resist, but apparently this is kind of similar to their earlier game called Resist. But yeah, so that was Witchcraft. So let's move on. So I have no new arrivals to show, so let's go on to games that I am backing. So the campaign for Colosseum ended, and the campaign for Cozy Cat Cafe is still going. And so I am still currently backing that, and that campaign ends on, in 3 days, and they've raised over $200,000 so far. So yeah, so there we go. So let's move on. So I don't actually have a cat update, but I have a seagull update. So one day I was driving and I saw a car hit a seagull and then just drive away. And I could tell by the way the seagull was hit that they kind of like hit it on its side maybe or something like that, but they didn't like directly like run over it, or maybe it kind of went underneath the car but wasn't like squished. But they drove off. So I stopped to check on the seagull, and yeah, there was no blood, but the seagull was extremely disoriented. Like he could not stand up, he could not lift up his head was just kind of like flopped over. So I keep a carrier in my car for emergencies, like a cat carrier. So I put him him in the cat carrier. I picked him up and I put him in there, and then I put him in the front seat next to me just so I can keep an eye on him. And then I started, like, you know, trying to call a bunch of different rescue organizations, see if anyone could take him in and help me out. So finally I found one that was 40 minutes away, so a 40-minute drive, that was willing to take him. By the time that we started our drive, because again, I'm in my car for like, I don't know, half an hour, maybe a little bit less than that, just trying to figure out who will take him or what I should do with him. But during that time, he managed to get on his feet and hold up his head. And then by the time we started driving, he managed to kind of get in a comfortable position and stay sitting there. And he was like kind of like dozing off and trying really hard to stay awake. So then we started our long drive, and I was just like talking to him and, you know, just trying to keep his spirits up and everything. So then we got to the rescue organization, and it turns out he was just a little baby because he had a lot of brown spots over him. So that means he's still a baby. And then the person took him, and I called them yesterday or the day before, and they said that he actually didn't have any broken wings, or, you know, nothing was injured, but he was just very, very dehydrated. So she's keeping him a bit longer just to, you know, get his fluid levels back up and just make sure he's in perfect shape before she decides that he should be released. I asked her if she could let me know when he's ready to be released, because I want to release him close to where I found him so that maybe he can reunite with his family. And so I don't want him to be released 40 minutes away where he doesn't know anyone. So we'll see. So I hope that she'll call me and that I can actually go pick him up and then release him myself. I would really love to do that. Yeah, because I would really like to see him again as well. So that is my animal story of the week. But one thing that I did was I had posted about this in the local Facebook group when I was trying to find rescue organizations, and oh my god, there are like so many horrible people in this world. Like, so many people were like not so many, but a couple people were like, or a few people were like, ew, that's like a rat with wings. Like, no, we don't care. Like, if we hit a seagull, like, you know, we can't be expected to stop. One person said that they would just run over a seagull, like they would not even try to avoid hitting a seagull or a squirrel for that matter. Like, there's just so many awful people. I'm like, if it doesn't cost you anything to be kind, then be kind, be compassionate. Like, if it's not costing you anything, then do the compassionate and kind thing. Like, everyone is just trying to live. These are living beings, breathing, sentient beings who are just trying to survive as well. So why not do the compassionate thing? And if you see an animal, slow down. If you see an animal, try to avoid hitting it, and don't just intentionally drive over it because they're rats with wings. Like, people are just so freaking awful. So anyway, so that is my animal update of the week. So let's move on. So for our fiction book club, we started this new book, which is called The Free People's Village by Sim Kern. And Sim Kern is the same author of the book that we are reading in the nonfiction book club, which is Genocide Bad. So it's very cool to be reading two of their books at once. So we were supposed to read the first 5 chapters of this book, The Free People's Village. So this is just setting the stage. So in this world, basically what you can read from the synopsis is that, you know, this is a world in which an alternate 2020 timeline in which Al Gore won the 2000 election and declared a war on climate change rather than a war on terror. Green infrastructure projects have transformed U.S. cities into lush paradises for wealthy white neighborhoods, at least, and the Bureau of Carbon Regulation levies carbon taxes on every financial transaction. So this book follows the story of Maddie Ryan, who's an English teacher at a predominantly Black high school in Houston. And so teaching is how she pays the bills, and then she has a band that she plays with, and it's a queer punk band called Bunny Bloodlust. So in the first 5 chapters, we basically get a background on this band and who the members are and how they all kind of came together. So, you know, there's so far a lot of names. So it's for someone who's not very good with names and remembering a lot of names, I kind of had to kind of flip back a couple of times and be like, okay, who is this person again? Like, is this the same person? So Maddie is the main character, and then she is basically in love with this character called Red. And Red is a trans person and uses these pronouns, which I do not even know how to pronounce. I think it's like they, them, it's X something. So I think in some instances it's like XE or XI or XIM. So is it like Zim and Zer and Zay, I think. So I just, I know I'm going to say that I'm probably going to mess up their pronouns because I'll probably just end up referring to them as they and them and their because I have never had to use the pronouns they, zim, zer. Like that is completely new to me and it's just really kind of hard to say. So if I mess up their pronouns, it's not intentional, but I'll probably end up calling them they and them and so on. So Maddie is in love with this person called Red, but Maddie is dating this person called Fish. I hope I got their names right. And Fish seems like kind of like an asshole. And then another person in the band is called Gesta. I don't know if that's how it's pronounced, or is it Gesta? Gesta. And Gesta, I guess, I don't actually know if we learn if this person is cis or if they're trans. But on page 11, we see that Gesta goes by he, him. And yeah. So anyway, so the first few chapters, we're just basically learning about how they came into this lab that they're both living in and playing in, and at nighttime the air conditioning comes on. It's not on during the day, I guess. They have this credit system where they can pay each other with carbon credits and earn carbon credits. You learn that there's a maglev metro or something like that, a maglev train. But you learn that for Maddie, as she starts going into the Black neighborhood where she teaches, it becomes less of this lush green, landscape, and it turns into more of like a city without all the greenery and so on. So basically you see that there's going to be some class differences here between the Black neighborhoods and the white neighborhoods. And so, I'm guessing that this book is going to be about how in this world they really wanted to, fix the climate problem, but in doing so, they still did not fix the class problem that exists. And even as you're fixing the climate problem, you still have this class, these class differences that really impact people. And I'm wondering as we continue to read on how that's going to impact the Black people in this book and where they're living and so on. So, so right now this was just an intro into the book, but so far it seems pretty interesting. And so far I'm enjoying Sim's writing style. So I am enjoying that so far. So let me know what you think so far, and whether, I know it's a bit early, but if you have any predictions about this book or what it's going to be about. But for next week, please read the next 5 chapters. So please read chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 for next week. I think we'll just do 5 chapters at a time, and then hopefully we will be done soon enough. So please read from page 33 to the end of page 70 for next time, and let me know your thoughts in the comments below. So let's move on. So for this week's nonfiction book club, we were supposed to read the second half of chapter 8, which is called Answering Hespera. So we were supposed to read from page 146 all the way to the end of 173. And 146 starts with Sim saying why I stopped using the term anti-Semitism. And we get a history about the term anti-Semitism, which is so interesting, which again is history that I didn't know, but found very, very fascinating. So we learned that the term anti-Semitism was first popularized in 1860s by Wilhelm Marr, who the author describes as a Victorian version of today's red-pilled alt-right racist bros. And then we get this whole history of the term and races, different people coming up with theories about races and whether races are actually scientific and so on. And what we learn is that no, there is no difference between the so-called races that exist today. So we learned that there's more genetic diversity within races than between races. So Max Planck at the Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology explains, what the study of complete genomes from different parts of the world has shown is that even between Africa and Europe, for example, there is not a single absolute genetic difference, meaning no single variant where all Africans have one variant and all Europeans have another one, even when recent migration is disregarded. So the author goes through all of these different people in history who try to explain how some races were inferior to other races. So like, sub-Saharan Africans were inferior to, like, for example, white people. I thought one of the interesting things was this one person who decided, so, again, the author goes into all these different people who came up with their own theories. And one of those people was Francois Bernier in 1684. So he lumped all Europeans, North Africans, Middle Easterners, Indians, and Southeast Asians and Native Americans into one race. And then all those people got to be white. And then his second race was sub-Saharan Africans. So I guess like the darker skinned Africans. And his third race was East Asians. And his fourth race was the Sami people, the indigenous people of northern Scandinavia. Like, that's just weird. Like the way that this guy lumped all these people into different races, and then the Sami people get their own race. But the indigenous people of North America, the indigenous people of different parts of the world, like, are part of this other big race. Like, just so weird that people would actually believe in this stuff as people were making it up. Like, just insane. So it's in 1785 that someone first uses the word Semite as a racial category. And then that just kind of stuck around as a racial category, even though it's actually not a racial category, as we learn in this chapter. And as I mentioned in last week's Rant of the Week, Judaism is a religion, and it's not a culture, and it's not a race, which this author confirms in this chapter. And we will see later in this chapter that there are Jews from, different parts of the world, like Morocco, Algeria, and different North African nations, and, they have different cultures. So Judaism is not a race, and Semites are not a race. And then the author describes another person who said that, the different races that existed came from the Bible and Noah's sons, and so they came up with races in that way. So interesting. But Semite as a racial category has stuck around, the author says. And then it says that some of the categories that came about describe races by color, like yellow, red, white, and black. So those colors are actually not describing skin colors, but they're referring to humorism, an ancient Greek medical theory that claims that the human body is made up of 4 fluids: blood, red; phlegm, white; the 2 types of bile, yellow and black. And there's actually a board game that's called 4 Humors that's about this, which is pretty fun. Let's see. Yeah, so, the author is just describing all of these, as they say, preposterous, made-up race science, which, the author does a wonderful job of explaining how it's all preposterous. And so there actually is not such a thing as a race, but we continue today to act like that there is. The author talks about Samuel Morton, who developed craniometry, like measuring skulls to prove that white people were superior to black people. And the author talks about how he actually lied in his studies and made up figures and selected certain people and manipulated data to come to the conclusion that white people were more intelligent because their skulls were supposedly bigger. Like, just insanity, just complete insanity. The author starts going into the topic of eugenics. So, all this discussion about race then leads into eugenics, like, making sure that the fittest survive. And this is all, also from Darwin, who, kind of influenced scientists and then who embraced eugenics. So, so then, the author is talking about how Jews used all of this and went with the fact that Semites are a race in order to justify having their own state of Israel. But again, Semites, they're not a race. So Semites are not a race. Jews are not a race. So now the author is getting into Zionism and how Zionism relates to anti-Semitism. So to be Zionist is to be anti-Semitic, this author argues, and I think proves really well. Yeah. So let's see. So this author says that anti-Zionist Jews have called out the fact that Zionism is anti-Semitism. So then this author talks about this one Jewish writer called Lucian Wolff, who was careful to distinguish between this new anti-Semitism thing taking hold in Germany and the old-fashioned Judenhass of Russia. So Judenhass is what this author continues to use to this day, because the author will not use the term anti-Semitism, but the author will use Jewish hate to describe what that is, Jewish hate, and we'll get into why the author uses the term Jew hate instead of anti-Semitism a little bit later. So Wolff was fiercely anti-Zionist because he saw Zionists agreeing with anti-Semites' worst fantasies. And he said that to claim a Jewish nationality now would be to shipwreck all the rights we have gained in Western countries, and so far from helping our persecuted brethren in Eastern Europe, we should involve the whole of Jewry in one great outburst of justified anti-Semitism. And then, the author describes as one other person who had a fantasy of transforming Jews of Europe, who he saw as nebbishy and despicable, into a new macho tough guy kind of Jew. And then, we get into this whole history of how Israel actually brought in Jews from Arab countries and how badly those Jews were actually treated. One thing that the author says is, only now do I realize how anti-Semitic it is to claim that I belong in Israel because of my Jewish race. Guess who else agreed that Jews did not belong in Europe and must be expelled? Adolf Hitler and Wilhelm Marr. So Wilhelm Marr, again, is the person who came up with the concept of anti-Semitism and used it in order to, that's what kind of gave rise to Nazism. Let's see. Oh yeah, so it says following World War I, half of Europe was desperately impoverished, and desperately impoverished people are easy to manipulate. So anti-Semitic politicians were getting elected by whipping up hate towards Jews. That really is so in alignment with what's happening in the USA today. So it says, in the 1930s, Wolff and other Jewish writers dropped the distinction between the old superstitious Judenhass and the new political anti-Semitism. They started using the terms synonymously because hate is hate. So, back then, it says that, Zionists did not like Jews as we were, and they agreed with anti-Semites that Jews did not belong in Europe. And early Zionists actively collaborated with anti-Semites to displace Jews to their colony in Palestine. And Theodor Herzl, who is considered the father of Zionism, wrote in his diary, "The anti-Semites will become our most dependable friends, the anti-Semitic countries our allies." So here you see clear evidence that, they allied with anti-Semites in order to achieve their colonization goals. And so, Herzl became really good friends or courted Balfour, who of course we know is the author of the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which is, the start of all of this, colonization. Well, not really the start, as we can see it started before then, but you know what I mean. And it says Zionists were also on strikingly good terms with the Nazi Party throughout the 1930s. So, in 1935, the German Zionist branch was the only political force that supported the Nazi Nuremberg laws in the country, and was the only party still allowed to publish its own newspaper, the Rundschau, until after Kristallnacht in 1938. Nazi officials would visit Palestine as guests of the Zionists in 1934 and in 1937. And then, the author talks about an agreement that was made between the Zionists and the Nazis called the Havara Agreement, in which they agreed to buy and support German-made goods and not boycott them, and so on, blah, blah, blah. Okay. So yeah, and then the author talks about how when it came to actually bringing in Jews from different parts of the world to Palestine, they were selectively bringing in people who they felt were more young, able-bodied, Hebrew-speaking, and independently wealthy. So they were focusing on those people and not necessarily the victims of Nazism in Germany. So they were more focused on who, this is eugenics, like who can we bring in that will then create this country of people that we can be really proud of. And then we get into this whole history about how Arab Jews were treated. And they were basically brought in to be like the slave workers, essentially, of Israel. Like that's what they were brought in for, basically. So the history about that is just really fascinating. It says Zionists also directly and indirectly instigated the mass displacement of Arab Jews to Israel, where they were met with structural racism at the hands of an elite Ashkenazi minority. So Arab Jews prior to the establishment of Israel lived comfortably within Muslim-majority countries. Where the situation of these Jews over 15 centuries was undeniably better than in Christian countries. So these Arab Jews were not eager to settle in Palestine and had to be lured to Palestine. And then we learn about bombings that took place in Baghdad in order to lure Jews from Iraq into Israel, Palestine, and that it was Israelis, Jewish people, Zionists, that are the ones who set off those bombs, pretending that it was like non-Jewish Arabs who did that. And this is what we see today as well. Like all these Zionists claiming that they're under attack, I would say 9 times out of 10, it's them who's, doing the attack on themselves. Like we've seen this time and time again. We've seen so many news articles of Zionists claiming that they were attacked and, a victim of an anti-Semitic attack. And then after investigation is done, you find out that they did it to themselves. Like they sprayed the graffiti themselves. They did whatever themselves. They sent out the anti-Semitic emails themselves. Like this is just old news now. This has been going on for a very long time. So again, we learn about this in Baghdad, these bombings that were actually carried out by Israeli agents. And it's here we learn that Ashkenazi Zionist elites have openly racist attitudes towards Arab Jews, viewing them as uneducated, superstitious, and even subhuman. We learned that to decide who from Morocco would get to come to Palestine, they had men take physical and gymnastic tests. Interesting. So we learned that once Arab, the whole thing with Yemen is just really sad. Honestly, about how all the Yemeni Jews were convinced to go to Israel, and then they learned how Yemeni Jews were being treated in Israel, and then they tried to stay. where they were, and then so many of them died, like without, reaching Palestine, but just really sad. But we learned that once they arrived in Israel, Zionists separated Arab families and communities against their will, replaced their given names with more Jewish ones, and moved them largely to rural territories where Palestinians had been most recently displaced. It says, yes, the Zionist desire to destroy Arab Jewish communities was most horrifyingly expressed in the human trafficking of some 600 Yemenite babies in the 1950s. Israeli medical personnel stole babies from their biological parents who were told their children had died in childbirth and gave the infants to Ashkenazi families. I wish, there are some Arab Jews, Zionists on Twitter who are just so infuriating with the garbage that they post about how Jews in Arab countries are treated so badly, and Israel's the only safe haven for Arab Jews, and blah, 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 blah. Like, how can they not be aware of these facts? And I just, I wish we could present them with facts, but they would just gaslight us anyway and come up with some weird explanation or way to get around it. Who knows? It says European Zionist Jews had fled the ghettos of Europe only to ensnare their Arab Jewish cousins in a similar system of structural racism, poverty, and disenfranchisement. So European Zionist Jews had fled the genocidal, eugenicist violence of the Nazi regime only to enact genocide on Palestinians and eugenics on Arab Jews. So just, again, they have become the Nazis. This author basically shows how Zionists became the Nazis. Like, they were doing everything that the Nazis were doing. So the author says that, whether you call it anti-Semitism, Judenhass, racism, anti-Arab hate, or Islamophobia, hate is hate. All these terms stand for different flavors of white supremacy. And so the author says that calling anti-Zionism anti-Semitism is like saying a thing is its opposite. It's as absurd as saying anti-racism is racism. Zionism is anti-Semitism. So the creation of the State of Israel transformed the relationship of Jews to state power. It fundamentally changed the relationship of Jews to the question of minorities. So the author says, my Jewish European ancestors had way more in common with today's Palestinians than they do with today's Israeli Jews. So the author says that they use the term Judenhass or anti-Jewish hate, and that you can swap out anti-Jewish part for anti-queer, anti-disability, anti-black, anti-Muslim. And then the author says that this makes it clear the commonality between anti-Jewish hate and all other hates. Seeing that commonality is crucial if we ever want to end hate and genocide and achieve collective liberation. Then the next part of this is how Israel legitimizes anti-Jewish hate. So, Israel, by conflating itself with Judaism and then behaving evilly, confirms hateful stereotypes about Jews. So, all those hateful stereotypes about blood libel and all these other things, Israel is basically the one that is perpetuating these stereotypes. These stereotypes that had no basis in history, but now do. So now Israel does, in fact, kill babies. Like, when the myth was created about blood libel, did Jews at that point in time kill babies and drink their blood? No, that was not true. But now we know it is true that, in fact, Zionists, Israel, does kill babies. They behead babies. So accusing the people you intend to genocide of baby killing is also still effective propaganda. Hence the bullshit Hamas beheaded 40 babies story, which both Israeli heads of state and the US president repeated in October 2023, but which the Israeli government press office has since admitted was a lie. So the State of Israel have made themselves synonymous with Judaism as far as Western governments and media are concerned. So then the author talks about all the other things that the state of Israel has done. They've routinely kidnapped, tortured, and massacred children through every year of their existence. An estimated 10,000 Palestinian children have been kidnapped from their families and held as political prisoners by the Israeli military over the past 20 years, held without sentence and prosecuted by military courts. It says over that 40% of children detained in Jerusalem were sexually abused by police. Tens of thousands of children have been bombed, sniped, suffocated, burned alive, beheaded, vaporized, gassed, and crushed to death by buildings and tanks. And then this doesn't even include all of the starvation, the dehydration, and medical neglect. The author says that babies are dying from heart attacks because of the intensity of their fear and trauma. And 21,000 children at the time that the author wrote this book were reported missing in Gaza, and 17,000 reported orphaned. And now we are many, many months later, so the numbers are much, much higher. So the author says that all these horrific acts have been committed under the blue and white Star of David, and that this symbol has become irreparably associated with hatred. So Israel has been doing this to themselves. The author, mentions how IOF soldiers have been doing cutesy TikTok dances on the ruins of families' homes and posting videos of themselves playing mockingly with the toys of the children they've massacred. So, not only do they kill children, they do so with glee. Yeah. So the author says the most powerful voices of Western Empire keep contradicting us, relentlessly pushing the narrative that Israel equals Jews. So then the author does a little bit of a transitive law of mathematics and says, so if Jews equal Israel, and Israel equals baby killers, which the author demonstrated they are, because they've killed countless babies, that means Jews equal baby killers. So we're right back to blood libel. So it's Israel that is now confirming all these stereotypes that used to exist about Jews and has made them true, has absolutely made them true. So Israel outperforms all kinds of harmful stereotypes about Jews. So, during the Nakba, they stole not just Palestinian lands and homes and possessions, but everything in the bank accounts. And more recently, they've stole $54 million from Gazan banks. That confirms the stereotype that Jews are greedy. Israel is doing all these things that line up with all these stereotypes that people used to have about Jews, which back then were not true, but now, again, Israel equals Jews, and then Jews equals X, Y, and Z, or Israel equals X, Y, and Z, then that means Jews are X, Y, and Z. So that's what's happening when Israel commits all these atrocities in the name of Judaism. So then the author talks about this one book that was written in which there were all these claims about Jewish people and how all those claims have come to fruition in today because of what Israel is doing, which is just very, very interesting. So, the author talks about the torture prisons and how people have been raped, Palestinians have been raped with fire extinguishers, hot metal sticks, cattle prods, and trained dogs. And so the author is making these comparisons between what was written in this book, the Protocols, it was just called the Protocols, and how Israel is doing all this stuff today. So even if it wasn't true back then, it's true now. The author talks about Israel's indecisive involvement, along with the U.S., Saudi Arabia, and the UAE's meddling, has significantly hindered efforts to resolve the ongoing conflict in Sudan. And, the author gives examples of how Israel has meddled in Latin America and other countries, done horrible things and has, destabilized other sovereign nations. AIPAC, the ADL, and the Israeli government's extreme influence over USCN politics, media, and universities come to mind. So again, the author talks about all of this, but then the author says, how does a 120-year-old book describe the actions of the modern-day nation-state of Israel so well? Easy, because the Protocols of the Elders of Zion describes the behavior of empire, any empire. So it doesn't capture how Jews think and behave, it captures how imperialists think and behave. And that's what Israel is. It's an imperialist colonizer, and that's what they are. And then the author goes into a little bit more history about how they wanted to be seen as this imperial colonizing power, and that's what they wanted. Yeah. So yeah. So the author says Zionism didn't seek to put an end to anti-Jewish hate, but to make Jews into the kind of people who would wield such hate against others. And, you know, again, the author goes over a lot of history showing how Israel has actually done that. So, you know, Israel, like, you know, they're so afraid when they hear Palestinians say from the river to the sea and say that that's a call for genocide, when it's not Palestinians who are committing genocide, it's the Israelis who are committing a genocide. But so why do they see that phrase as a genocidal phrase? Because again, every accusation is every accusation is a confession. So they themselves are genocidal. So of course, when they hear people, you know, saying this call for freedom, they're viewing it as a call for genocide when they're the ones who are actually committing genocide. So again, the author goes on about imperialism and empire and how that's what Israel is, and, you know, all the similarities between the Zionists and the Nazis. Yeah, and then, you know, describing how Zionism is empire. So Zionists have been rich while anti-Zionists have been poor. Zionists have been defended by the most dangerous militaries on earth, while anti-Zionists have been beaten in the streets by the police of those nations. Zionist voices have been amplified by Western media, while anti-Zionist voices have been systematically shut out of publishing, academia, and the political sphere. I mean, to know who is on the right side of history, look at who the countries are trying to silence. The countries are not trying to silence Zionists, they're trying to silence anti-Zionists. So that right there should tell you everything that you need to know. And again, everything in America is connected, which people just don't want to, you know, acknowledge. Like liberals and Democrats don't want to acknowledge who are supporting this empire, this Zionist empire. Yeah. The author says, to stand against anti-Jewish hate, therefore, necessitates criticizing Zionism. Yeah. Hate is manufactured by elites to dehumanize people so you can kill them and steal their shit. Very true. And that's what's happening to Arabs and Muslims today. The author says, it's sort of shocking that there isn't more anti-Jewish hate within the Free Palestine movement, but truly in years of organizing, I have never encountered any. Again, and you know, again, that just goes back to all these claims of these anti-Israel movements being anti-Semitic or anti-Jewish, which they're not. Like, I have never witnessed such a thing, and it's always the Zionists who infiltrate these protests and start yelling anti-Jewish slurs and phrases and try to pretend that it's the Palestinians or the pro-Palestinian people who are saying it, when in fact it's not. It's the Zionists themselves saying it, trying to perpetuate this myth that there is a lot of anti-Jewish hate. Yeah. Yeah, and then the author says, even Hamas is crystal clear that their beef is with Zionism, not Judaism. Yeah, and then the author talks about how Trumpers today, it's not that they suddenly stopped hating Jews, it's that they hate Arabs way more. Yeah. So the author ends with saying, Zionism is anti-Semitism. Israel is an anti-Semitic nation, and criticizing Israel is essential for fighting both anti-Jewish and anti-Arab, anti-Muslim, and anti-Palestinian hate. So that was a really important chapter, and I just so wish that all the Zionists and the uneducated Americans who are convinced that, you know, anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism would read this chapter. But people like that could never be reasoned with anyway. When you've been so indoctrinated with anti-Arab hate, anti-Muslim hate, and you view Arabs as not even human, Like, they're not going to be able to read this and understand it. Like, they're just blind to it. And it's just like, what do you do? What do you do then? Yeah, so as the world is taken over by these stupid people, people who are uneducated, people who are fascist, like, yeah, I don't know. What do you do? So all we can do is read and educate ourselves and hope that our closest people, you know, the people closest to us in our circles will become educated and then educate their friends and family and so on. And that gradually change will happen. I guess that's what we can hope for. Well, anyway, so for next week, let's read chapter 9. Jews are entitled to Palestine. So please read from page 175 up to the end of page 197. So that's pretty doable. That's only like 22 pages. So let's do that for next time. And please leave your comments in the comment section below and let me know what you thought of this week's reading, what you found to be really interesting. Did you learn anything new? Just share whatever you want to share in the comments below. So let's move on. So in this week's rant of the week, I actually want to start with some kind of like positive good news. So the positive good news is that there are 2 board game designers that, shared some news about Palestine and what's happening. So first, Tim Eisner, a couple days ago, he posted, and it's a public post, so you can see it on Facebook if you go there. So he posted an article from the BBC, the headline of an article which says, "Children queuing for supplements killed in Israeli strike in Gaza, hospital says." This is just one incident of many, 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 many incidents of children being massacred and killed and so on. And so Tim wrote, "This must stop. We citizens of the US are complicit." So that was really good to see. There were a number of people who liked this post and someone even shared it. And one of the people who shared it is another board game designer, Paul Solomon. So Paul is the designer of Honey Buzz as well as Stamp Swap. And Tim Eisner is the designer of Leaf and a couple other games like Canopy, I believe. I think he's the designer of March of the Ants, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not sure. So, these are not like your Rainer Knizias, but they're decent, good designers whose games are played by people. So Paul Solomon shared Tim Eisner's post and wrote his own little blurb above it. He wrote, "Reminder that Israel murders children every day. Can anyone justify the fact that Israel has banned baby formula from entering Gaza? The answer is no, they cannot." And, a number of people liked that post as well. So that's the good news. The good news is that there are these 2 white guys in the board game industry, 2 designers who have now shared news about Palestine. Do we wish that they had shared it sooner? Do we wish that they had done, that many, many months ago? Yes, but, better late than never. So that is the good news. The bad news is that it takes white people having to speak up to normalize calling out Israel for what it's doing. Like, when people like me, a colored Muslim person in the industry, has been shouting for almost 2 years now that there is a genocide happening, posting stuff about the genocide, I don't get the kind of reactions that Tim and Paul did. I don't get the sad faces and the agreements that, yes, this is terrible. My posts mostly go ignored. I don't get the likes and all of that because, no one wants to be seen agreeing with the colored Muslim woman. But once white people start talking about it, it becomes safer to agree that, yes, there is a genocide happening. Now, more and more white people can see, oh, here's this white person who looks like me saying that what's happening to those Arabs and Muslims is a bad thing. So now I'm going to agree that, yes, it's a bad thing, and I'm going to like this post. Even though, I've never liked a post of Sarah saying like, hey, there's a genocide happening and the US is complicit, let's put a stop to it. But that is the way of the world. And if you've been reading along with all of our books, especially this one, Genocide Bad, in which we've just finished a whole chapter about race and whether race exists and, and how this all ties into white supremacy, like you will see how this all ties in together. Like everything just fits together. Like, these are puzzle pieces that come together. White supremacy, genocide, how, you know, someone like me can say stuff against the genocide and just be completely ignored for months and months, and then two white guys say it, and all of a sudden it's like, yes, genocide is happening. Yes, it's bad, and we agree with you. But, you know, again, good news that they said something, and I hope that they will continue to speak out and say something, and that more and more people will continue to speak out and say something and condemn not just the genocide, but Zionism, because as we've seen from this book and all the other books we've read in the nonfiction book club, Zionism is the cause of this all. Zionism is evil. Zionism is empire. Zionism needs to be destroyed. Zionism is not simply the Jewish right to exist. Everyone has a right to exist. Jews have a right to exist. Muslims have a right to exist. Christians have a right to exist. People of different skin colors and ethnicities, whatever, everyone has a right to exist. You don't need a concept created that really, just as we've seen from this book, is all about empire. You don't need that to tell you that Jews have a right to exist and that everyone has a right to safety. But Zionism actually is the opposite of safety, and is the opposite of safety for Jews, and it's the opposite of safety for Arabs and Muslims. So Zionism needs to be eradicated. And if people are still silent about Zionism, if people are still supporting their Zionist publishers, designers and friends and content creators in this industry, then you are still complicit in this genocide. So this was a great first step, seeing two white dudes in this industry speak up about the genocide, but we need to keep it going, and we need to make it get farther. And I'm not taking any credit for this having happened. Like, I don't know where Tim, has been getting his news. I don't know, how he came to the conclusion now, almost 2 years later, that genocide is bad and the US is complicit. But again, better late than never. But again, I take no credit for any of this, because I don't know if anyone even listens to me or watches my videos, or, has joined our Palestine book club and has been reading along to learn more. Who knows? But yeah, again, so, it takes white people speaking up to normalize calling this genocide what it is in this industry. So I just hope more and more people will speak up, and that they will continue to do so. But I will say that, yes, as a Muslim person, as a colored person, it is disappointing to me personally that my voice gets ignored, while voices of other people who actually have no, skin in the game, no ties to the land, whatever, their voices are accepted as more legitimate. And, then it's safe to say genocide is bad, when no, genocide is bad. Like, genocide bad. Like, everyone should have known that from day one. It should not take a white dude saying it for other people to feel safe in saying it too. But unfortunately, again, that is the way of the world, and I want to just point out, on Paul Solomon's thread, one of the people who gave it a sad face is a really big content creator who had unfriended me and unfollowed me everywhere back in November. And I had sent them a message just to ask them, why. So, that is Easy Cat, Jason Headley. So before, he was following me on TikTok, on Instagram. He was viewing my Instagram stories, in which almost, again, all of my stories are about Palestine. He was liking my Instagram posts about board games, and then all of a sudden just stopped and completely unfollowed me everywhere, and then did not respond to my message asking why. So, I can only make assumptions. That's all I can do. Is it because I'm a colored Muslim woman who's very loud and just very angry that the board game world is just silent about this genocide? I don't know. I don't know. But I saw that he sad reacted to Paul's article that he shared, yet again, it's safer when a white person says something, and then this white content creator, Jason, can now make a sad face on it. Yet, in everything that I ever shared about Palestine, no, nothing. Again, so it's just really disappointing when I see content creators like this, who again have built a platform on diversity. Jason is someone who claims to be very inclusive and very, accepting of other people and, you know, wanting everyone to feel welcome. And, you know, he's built a platform on being this liberal person, yet, you know, again, it takes a white person for him to like, you know, make a sad face and show that he is concerned about this genocide. There's been no posts about the genocide. There's been no condemnation from him. And I can only guess as to why he unfriended me and unfollowed me everywhere. We weren't friends on Facebook. So he just like literally just unfollowed me everywhere and then didn't answer my message as to me asking him why. And when I was curious. I mean, but this is what I've been dealing with for a long time now. So, you know, I see other people who have reacted to Tim's and Paul's posts, and it's disappointing to me because I know I've made multiple posts where they have not reacted or said anything about the genocide. But again, it's safer for them because these are two white dudes. So yeah, and I just feel like, you know, in the future, someday, I hope when the whole world sees that Israel was in the wrong, when, you know, Israel is on trial, when all the people who, you know, were the people behind this genocide, behind all the terrible things, when they're all on trial, and then everyone in the world is claiming to have been on the right side of history. I hope that people will remember that I, you know, since day one have been on the right side of history and have been encouraging and people to learn and speak up. But do you think that someone like me is going to get the credit in the future? No, it's going to be the white dudes, because again, that is just how the world works. So there's a content creator on TikTok, and his handle is like for Y Games. And he is a Filipino content creator, and he's going to be on a panel in Gen Con. So he created a video recently in which he stated that he's going to be on a panel on Gen Con about how to create like a welcoming space for everyone. And he said, if you have any questions below, leave them in the comments below, and we'll address them on this panel. So I left him a question about how can Muslims and Arabs feel welcome in the board game space when the genocide of Arabs, of Palestinians, is just being completely ignored and no one is talking about it. I had left him a comment previously on a video of his about the genocide, which he also ignored. And here is a content creator who's very much built his platform on diversity, equity, and inclusion. Do I think he's actually, so he said, if you have questions, leave them in the comments below and we'll answer them at the panel. If anyone, I'm not going to Gen Con, but if anyone is going, I would love to know if he answers this question. So if someone could please attend this panel and let me know if he talks about the genocide and what the community can do to make Arabs and Muslims feel more welcome. I would love to know if he addresses this, but I would bet like all my money that he's not going to address it, because he has yet to condemn the genocide. He has yet to say anything about it. So, you know, I would bet all my money that that question is just going to be completely ignored. But, you know, all these people who keep on saying, like, wasn't it at the... you know, I don't watch their videos, but I remember seeing clips and this being a thing for Our Family Plays Game, where they used to say, do good trouble or something like that. I don't know if they still do, but that was a thing of theirs, I think a few years ago, like do good trouble. Like, this is what good trouble is. This is what good trouble is. So like, if you're not actually getting in your friends and, you know, influencers' faces who you admire and asking them to speak up about the genocide, then what is good trouble? Like, this is good trouble. This is trying to raise awareness about an important issue and telling these people with big platforms to use their platforms for a good cause. Like, why are you able to use your platforms for Black Lives Matter, Trans Lives Matter, Trans Kids Matter, you know, whatever other causes there are, like all these important causes that exist that the community gets behind, but not for stopping a genocide that is being live streamed. There is no excuse. No one has any excuse. They cannot say that they didn't know. Like, you fucking know what's going on. You fucking know that there are kids, Palestinian babies getting beheaded, that there are children getting raped in Israeli prisons, that the most horrific atrocities are happening. You fucking know. It's being live streamed. It's being reported about every single day. This is the first live streamed genocide in history. You fucking know, and you have no excuses in the future. You can't say that you didn't know. So do good trouble. What does do good trouble mean if not telling all these people you admire with big platforms who've stayed utterly silent that they should be speaking up? Like, why? Like, I just can't imagine being an influencer and having such a huge reach and not using that reach for such an important cause, not even once. I recently posted a story on Instagram. Around 100 people saw this story that I'm going to post a screenshot of here. So 100 people saw this, 100 people, and out of these 100 people, I will say about 99 or 98 of them have never once said anything about the genocide. So, like, no one is feeling compelled, or I don't know what it is, but it's just like the dehumanization of Arabs and Muslims has been so ingrained into, people that they don't even realize it. They don't even realize how much they've dehumanized Arabs and Muslims, and that they don't view us as human, and they just don't care, and they won't ever use their platform to speak up when they will about other issues that matter. Like, so yeah, it's really infuriating. So if you really believe, like, if Our Family Plays Games really believed in what they said, if they really believed in doing good trouble, then they would stop accepting sponsorship from a Zionist publisher. They would no longer be sponsored by Kids Table Board Gaming, which is owned by Helena Kappel, who is a known Zionist. They would stop that. So, Mick from Our Family Plays Game has blocked me everywhere. So, it's not like I can ever even, like, comment on anything and be like, hey, like, maybe you should stop accepting Zionist blood money, but, like, but do you ever think anyone else is going to say that to him? Like, what else is do good trouble? Like, if you're not making your own friends and family feel uneasy for supporting a genocide, then who else is going to do that? Like, I don't know. You should be the ones who are telling your friends and family, like, hey, you're in the wrong here, and here's why. And if you're not doing that, then you're not doing the bare fucking minimum. Like, seriously, like, there's a genocide being live streamed, and if you're not trying to educate your family and friends or the content creators that you admire and encouraging them to speak up, then you're not doing the bare minimum. Like, these content creators with these huge platforms who've built their platforms on diversity, equity, and inclusion, like, again, Eric Lang, Our Family Plays Games, like, Suzanne Sheldon, all these people have not yet once condemned the genocide or said anything. So I don't know. I've said before, it can't all be on me. It really cannot all be on me. And more people need to start speaking up and encouraging others to speak up and do something. And yeah, so I'm just really, really tired. And I think I've said that before. I'm just really, really freaking tired. I recently posted something on Facebook, and I don't know if I'll probably end up blocking out this person's name, but I posted, so a fatwa was issued on Donald Trump, like, to kill Donald Trump, and by, the Ayatollah in Iran. And so I shared an article about this, and I wrote how the comments on the original post are really funny. I did not say that the fatwa is funny. I said that the comments that the people have made on this post are really funny, and they really, really were funny. So I'm just going to read you a couple of the comments that I see. So someone wrote, GoFundMe, asking for a friend. I wonder how much Elon would have put in if he saw this. Melania getting a top donor email and t-shirt in the mail. Someone wrote, is this like a Go Fatwa? Someone wrote, that's a bigly bounty. Someone wrote, I wonder if Putin donated. So just some really funny comments about this. And let's just, as a reminder, Trump is a monster. He's a fucking monster, right? So he is, doing everything that he can to make sure that we are moving at super high speeds to 100% fascism. Like, I'm not saying that this country wasn't fascist before. We've always had, like, elements of fascism here and there, but now we are on, like, the high speed railway to fascism, pure fascism. He's, due process means nothing to him. Citizens are going to be imprisoned without due process. We've already seen people sent to a death prison in El Salvador. Like, you know, Trump is not someone who I care about. Like, if he died tomorrow, would not give a shit, would be happy. So anyway, so I posted the article and just said that the comments were really funny. Again, not that the fatwa was funny. And then this person who I'm friends with on Facebook responded saying that she remembers a fatwa being declared against Salman Rushdie when she was a kid, and it shaped her view of Iran as a dangerous place that cannot be trusted. Not funny. So I responded saying that the fatwa itself isn't funny, it's the comments on the post. And then I said, okay, if you think Iran is a dangerous place because of this one thing, then what about Israel? Is Israel a dangerous place because they've been committing a genocide? Blah, blah, blah. And then I said, or is that kind of judgment only reserved for Muslim majority countries? And then she responded, and then she didn't say that Israel is a dangerous country. She said that she strongly disagrees with what Israel is doing. And then I responded, like, I didn't ask if you strongly disagree. I want to know if you think Israel is a dangerous country. And then, you know, she also had mentioned how that any country that makes a fatwa on an author and tries to silence speech like that, like, they're not in the 21st century. So then I was like, okay, news for you. Like, Israel assassinated an author in 1970, was it 72? So what do you think of that? Do you think that she responded to that? No, she didn't respond to that. You know, so I explained how Ghassan Kanafani was assassinated by Israel. And again, me asking if you think Israel is a dangerous country is not to justify the fatwa on Donald Trump. It's just to see whether only Muslim countries, Muslim majority countries, can be dangerous. Like, Iran is not the country that dropped 2 atomic bombs on another country. Iran is not a country that has attacked another country in modern history without being attacked first. Iran is a country that has not attacked another country in modern history without being attacked first. Iran, you know, so like, you know, we want to talk about dangerous countries. What about, like, America? Like, what about Israel, like, the country committing a genocide? You know, what about these countries that are supposedly in the 21st century that, you know, will do anything to destabilize other sovereign nations for their own imperial interests? No, instead, she hung on to this fact that a fatwa was issued against an author when she was a child, and has ever since then believed that Iran is a dangerous place. So then we just went back and forth for a little bit. And then she accused me of saying that, she says, I understand that you are of Iranian descent. That's why I connected your post with Iran. As for Trump, essentially you chose him over Kamala by not voting for her in the elections. You could vote for the lesser evil, but you chose not to. You helped Trump win, and now you get the consequences. No, like, I am so sick of this kind of ignorance. Like, if you are, first of all, she's a foreigner. She lives in Europe. Like, if you don't understand American politics enough to understand how shit the Democratic Party is, like, I cannot help you. Like, educate yourself. Like, fucking educate yourself. Like, if even today you don't understand that the Democratic Party does not give a shit about the people, then I don't know how to help you. Like, it's never been more clear in history that the Democratic Party does not give a shit about people, the regular people. So I'm just, like, so over this. I'm just really, really over this. Anyway, so I just, you know, the people who need to educate themselves won't. It's the people who are joining my book club and who are reading this book who don't need to. Like, we are the ones who already, like, know not to believe in all the propaganda we see. We are the ones who know to think critically before accepting anything as fact. Like, we are not the ones who need to be reading these books. It's people like her and other dumb people in the industry who need to be reading books and educating themselves. But how do you get people to do that? You can't just force someone to educate themselves. So yeah, it's just really, really frustrating, and I'm just really, really fucking tired. So yeah, so that is my rant of the week. So let's move on. This week's question of the week is inspired by Witchcraft. What is your favorite game that is designed to be a solo game? So not a game with a solo mode, but a single player only game? What is your favorite solo only game that you have played? So let me know in the comments below, and if you've played Witchcraft, please let me know if you like it or not and tell me why. So until next week, bye.